This episode is brought to you by freedadcourse.com. You are always one conversation away from changing your life, and the power of hello is something that I subscribe to every single day, and I'm always saying hello to new people everywhere I go. Increasing your opportunity, increasing your connection, and getting access to the solutions to the problems that you are facing, whether you're on active duty or just beginning your veteran transition or even transitioning out for 20 years. On the other side of hello are the solutions that you're looking for. Again, head on over to freedadcourse.com. Get your 5-episode audio course to create more connection, create more friendships, and get back to living the life that you're trying to design.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home.
Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back. It is Fatherhood Friday, and today I want to bring a podcast update and also some news that's going to be happening in the coming months here. So this podcast is just now, within the month of July, 2.5 years old. That's over 200 episodes. That's over 128 interview shows and well over 100 Fatherhood Fridays. And as I say those numbers, it is hard for almost me to believe that when I started this mission way back on a plane ride back from Orlando in September of 2018, that I would still be going with this podcast, with this mission, and the mission would still be growing as much as it is growing today. And it continues to grow and make an impact with dads out there every single day. I get messages saying like these episodes are helping them become a better dad. And some of the stats on this podcast are we are in the top 1.5% of all podcasts currently listed in your podcast player. 1.5%. Now there's some fine print that's attached to that out of the like 1.8 million podcasts that you could search, only about 800,000 of them are still actively being published. But still, even just in this year, we've gone from the top 2% down to 1.5%. And so that is just an incredible honor to actually kind of feel you're getting close to being a 1%er. If you remember back to the 99 to 1% movement, like maybe 5 years ago, kind of cool to be in that 1% moment, but within podcasting. And that's because of you guys out there listening to this podcast, supporting it, and continuing to spread the message. We are just shy of 40,000 downloads. We are pushing well over 2,500 downloads a month. These episodes, they go all the way back. It's crazy what people go back and find and listen to and enjoy. But that's when you create a podcast. It's all this great content out there. And that content continues. Even stuff that I recorded years later is still out there producing and helping dads tell better stories within their life and figure out what that narrative looks like to come home. Now, I give you that update to kind of tell us where we are. But where we are is one of those places that's very interesting because I have to take my own advice without what I'm ready to say. That as we've been going through the summer, one thing that has always been on my mind is summer is my dad time. I wait for the summer to come around all year long, especially this past year where you've been following my journey. And you know that I've been a stay-at-home dad trying to balance everything going on, balance school, get the kids, keep everything going in the house, have my wife go to work every day. And the summer is that time where everybody's home. And so what I'm going to do is a very similar thing that I did in the spring when I paused the podcast. I'm going to pause the interview shows, and I'm going to keep doing the Fatherhood Fridays. Because the Fatherhood Fridays are something that I continued to do, and the amount of work is also a lot lower than the threshold to produce an interview show. So we're going to pause the interview show on Mondays, and you're only going to hear from me on Fridays. You're going to continue to hear different things. I've got a couple different things I plan on doing. I'm going to plan on going back into the archives and kind of pulling out some of the juice that I remember and some of the best kind of one-liners that I still remember from these different episodes. There are so many little tidbits that as the host of this podcast, I regurgitate on other people's podcasts because this is such golden wisdom. So we're going to change it up a little bit. And what those Fatherhood Fridays are going to be, I'm going to go into the archives, kind of dig into what we can do. But those Monday shows are going to be paused. And for me, this is one of those where, again, I'm taking my own advice and I'm prioritizing dad time. and I'm never going to get this summer back. I know there are more summers, but this summer is here right now. And I want to make sure that I'm here for it. It's been a long year and a half to get to this summer, and I want to make sure I can be as present as possible. And right now, this interview part is really taking up a lot of time, and I want to make sure I prioritize what's important. And as a dad and a host of this podcast, talking about prioritizing what's important, I need to eat my own words here and pause the interview show. But like I said, Fatherhood Fridays will still be coming to you every Friday. And now, how long am I going to pause it? I'm going to pause it for a little bit longer than I did last time. I'm going to pause it till Labor Day because July is everybody's home. August is kind of this unique time where half of everybody's home, half of everybody's going back to school. My wife starts school about mid-August. And so there's different times for different things that I want to make sure I make the time for. So I'm going to make sure that I come back and it's all in, because what I also know is that once comes September, all the kids are in school and we've got an 8-hour day to really move the needle on this podcast. And so this podcast isn't going anywhere. I want to make sure you understand that this podcast, in many ways, is still just getting started. And so come Labor Day, we're going to be firing on all cylinders. The window of opportunity to create and produce this podcast is going to exponentially go up because of that ability to just reshift my time and not have to do so many of the dad things that I normally was doing during the day with my younger and in preschool. So the entire game changes in September. So like I said, I'm going to pause the interview show and we'll be back with Monday shows September 6th. Now, if something changes, some universe thing in my world changes where we're going to be back maybe a little bit sooner, you'll always be hearing fresh content from me on Friday, and I'll always give you the truth and where I'm at. But I can say for sure, September 6th is essentially when everything's going to be going back to normal here in Military Veteran Dad. And maybe this will be a new norm, that in the summer is just something that I turn down because it is a season that is so important to me that we only get it once a year. And here in Southern Wisconsin, what I never truly appreciated was when I did have a job, there was nowhere else to be. So there wasn't really this big dilemma of summer or work. I had to be at work. What else choice did I have? And so now with this whole new idea of what I'm doing and what I'm creating, summer is that one time where the world opens up for us in Wisconsin. We can do a bunch of fun things outside, and that time only comes once, and then we kind of go back into hibernation through here in Wisconsin. So I want to make sure I prioritize. And so this may be something that evolves within the nature of how this podcast is produced and when we publish. But like I said, Mondays are getting paused, Fridays are going to keep going, and you'll continue to hear me on Fridays bringing different things. And as I said, bringing those archival, like best of tips, telling you to go back, listen to this episode to tell you to kind of really go back and find some of that missing gold that maybe because you were always listening to the future, you never really had enough time to go back in the past, because I know as a dad, there's only so much time. And even in your commute, if you listen to this podcast, there's only so much commute to listen to a podcast before you're like, oh, I need to go back to radio. So I appreciate every one of you out there listening to this podcast. I appreciate every one of you out there sharing this podcast. This podcast is making a difference. It will continue to make a difference. I just need to prioritize what I've always said in this podcast. And so we're going to prioritize time and family. And I'll be back again with you every Friday. And I've rambled enough about this podcast update. Guys, stay strong. Stay heart-centered within yourself. Have a great weekend. And I hope that you make some great memories, that the 4th of July kind of set the tone for where your summer is going to end. You've already got some things on the books. If you don't, get them on the books and get going and get living. Maybe this encourages you to do something similar in your life and pause something that maybe isn't the right season to keep going, and to be able to shift what's more important. And come December, what are you going to wish you did more of in the summer? Keep doing what you're doing or focus on family. And so with that, guys, I will talk to you guys again on Friday.